Hello there, guys. Welcome to the Raw Reflections podcast. This is brought to you by the Mirror Impact. My name is Ariel Keller, and today we are going to be continuing our series on managing stress. This week we are going to be focusing specifically on identifying stressors in our lives that we could either release, repair, or overcome, which we're going to be talking about the response portion next week. Welcome back. If you did not get a chance to see the week 1 video on modifying your mindset, I will link that video in the description box. You can watch that. And we will, in that one, we talk about reframing our mindset when it comes to stress, when it comes to understanding how the body is affected by stress, because sometimes we think it's just, emotional stress, but there are different areas of stress, and we're going to break that down a little bit more specifically today. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to that one, check the description box for that link. Go ahead and listen to that one first, and then jump onto this one. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet today. I very much enjoyed last week's podcast. I hope you do too. But I felt like it was I said everything I needed to say, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So this week, if you are a part of my VIP membership platform, please take a look at the lifestyle portion, because there are a couple of worksheets that I would love for you to work through. You can use this podcast as a tool to help you work through them. Some of us are not visual learners, or we're not good at interpreting what the words say and being able to address that in our own specific lives. And that's why I do the podcast. So this is for all of you, Audible and kinesthetic learners that need something to do while they listen. So print off those sheets. It will, you should have buttons in your lifestyle post for this week. So check that. And if you are not a VIP member, but you still want to take some notes here, just grab a piece of paper and a pen. I would, however, whether you're using the sheets or a piece of paper, keep those sheets, because we're going to be building on those worksheets next week for the podcast on responding to these stressors that we are identifying. We're going to jump right in today, starting with our identifying the different areas of stress. So this podcast, we're going to focus specifically on identifying stressors that influence our physical health, both internal and external. And then we're going to talk about stressors that influence your emotional health and your mental health. And that those can be internal and external, which we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. So first off, we're starting, and I'm going to do an additional podcast on the 4 tendencies, because of something that I'm currently learning about, and I'm loving what I'm learning. It makes sense, so I'm going to start incorporating that into my training with my clients, and also with some of this application for stress as well. So keep an eye out for that. I might link a description or a link to that in the description box as well. So number 1, we're starting with identifying specific stressors that influence your physical health, both internal and external. So first off, I mentioned this a little bit last week, but gut stress. Okay, this is a big one for me, guys, because this is something that I struggled with. My gut stress caused me to not be able to lose weight for years. That is when I was in my season of yo-yo dieting. I went through a phase of, I don't know if I could necessarily call it bulimia, but I was making myself throw up after I would eat food because of the guilt that I felt for eating it. And I wasn't officially diagnosed or anything. I did not identify with that condition personally, and I have healed from that. But it was a big area of difficulty for me, that was my gut. So I'm speaking from experience, and I want you to know that this is a pain point for me. So if it is also a pain point for you, I think this could be very encouraging for you. Gut stress, inflammation, that could be anything from inflammation due to food sensitivities, allergic reactions, and this can be not only with food, but also with medications. If you're on any harsh medications, antibiotics have a huge, they do a lot to your gut. I actually had to take antibiotics recently, and I was not happy about it, but I didn't have a choice. And it definitely set off my gut balance, because what antibiotics do is they kill off the bad bacteria, but sometimes they kill off the good bacteria. And that's why it's important to take a probiotic or something, because you can be more prone to yeast infections or those kinds of things where your body is reacting to this sudden form of medication killing all this bacteria, and your body's going to react in afterwards as well. So be cautious when you're taking medication, know what you're putting in your body, and if at all possible, work with your doctor on how to implement more homeopathic remedies or vitamins, minerals, vitamin treatments. They do a lot of those now, and they're not, I mean, I don't actually know how expensive they are, but they're definitely worth looking into, and sometimes your insurance will cover it. So there's always other options that go beyond just putting a bunch of chemicals in your body, because it does affect your gut. And there's a lot of other side effects that could happen with that as well. So keeping that in mind, it's in addition to that, it could be intolerance to certain dyes in foods. Some people have, I know my sister's allergic to the red dye in cold medicine, so she will swell up in hives, but sometimes you will be affected only on the inside, so you won't see it on the outside, but it'll make you feel terrible. And the same thing with certain foods. You may not swell up and your throat may not close up when you eat tomatoes, but because they have lectin in them, they may cause your gut some inflammation, and that may be causing your stomach to hurt after you eat spaghetti or chili. Or I know chili is a super difficult food for your body to digest because of the legumes and the tomatoes and that kind of thing. If you can digest chili, you probably have a digestion, like without any gas or bloating or anything, you probably have the gut of steel. Just saying. And also keeping in mind, sometimes when you cut out a certain food, you will decrease your tolerance to that food. So my husband, since we got married, he's been eating solely turkey bacon, because I don't eat pork very often at all. And he has now grown an intolerance to pork. So we went out to dinner the other night, and he ended up losing all of his dinner within like an hour afterwards, because he had pork sausage on his burger, and it did not agree with him. And he's like, all right, well, I guess I'm not eating pork anymore. And he could continue to eat pork. That is completely his decision. I'm not going to tell him one way or the other, but because he has realized it's not something that benefits his body and it does not make him feel good, he's probably not going to want to eat that anymore. So sometimes it's not as obvious as throwing up or getting hives, but when you are in tune with your body, you can identify those things that cause the inflammation. So keep that in mind. I talk a little bit about that in my intuitive eating podcast as well. So that's a little bit on gut stress. Also keeping in mind your fillers and preservatives in food. Some people are more sensitive to others. And that's going to be your MSG and your maltodextrin. Sometimes people who are sensitive to gluten can be very sensitive to MSG. And MSG does have an effect on your insulin balance. So if you're trying to lose weight, especially as a woman, burn fat, if your insulin is super, super high, it's going to affect your estrogen levels, which are going to affect your ability to lose fat. So keep that in mind. And then playing onto that as well, some of those common sensitivity foods I mentioned last week were gluten, lectin, dairy, soy, some artificial sweeteners like Splenda, Sweet and Low, and sugar alcohols. That is a big one. Watch for your sugar alcohols and your artificial sweeteners. The good ones are going to be your stevia, your monk fruit, Truvia, anything made with stevia. Trulies for alcohol are made with stevia, just FYI. So that's my go-to when I'm like spritzer water, whatever, want a little, refreshing drink, not too high in calories, and it's sweetened with stevia rather than your diet sodas and all of these bad, I'm not going to go into it in this podcast because I could talk about this for a long time, but, and I can do another one. I think I may actually have one already, a podcast on this. I can't tell you what the name of it is though. That sugar alcohols can cause so much destruction to your gut, eventually poke holes in your gut, cause leaky gut syndrome, which can affect all kinds of things from joint pain to, just achy muscles and not being able to digest properly, all the way up to causing eventual ulcerative colitis or something like that. So going into a little bit further, I'm going to talk about alcohol for a second. Alcohol puts a lot of stress on your body. All of you know this, but we deny it. All of us know this, but we deny it whenever we drink, most of the time. So I want you to keep that in mind. It is obviously your choice to drink alcohol, drink as much alcohol as you want to, but you need to understand what it's doing to your body. Just like if you're going to go to the fair and you're going to eat a bunch of fried food, if you know what that's doing to your body, you can make an educated decision about how much you're going to consume. So, alcohol in your body. A couple of things to keep in mind. Alcohol should never be consumed on an empty stomach. It is horrible for your digestive system, your gut biome. It causes so much havoc on your gut that it can cause that leaky gut syndrome. It's not a lucky gut if it's leaky. All right. That is going to halt your weight loss. Alcohol does not necessarily, in small quantities and within moderation, and this is alcohol. This is not, I'm talking like straight liquor or a wine that's not super high in sugar, more of like a dry red wine, because words are hard today, or drinking something like a Truly or I don't actually know what White Claws are made out of, the sweeteners, because I don't drink them, but check your ingredients. I know it can be hard to do with alcohol, but you can look it up online and see what the calorie count is and the sugar count. Just Google it on your smartphone. We carry those around with us all the time. Why not use them? All right, so keeping that in mind, trying to avoid the super sugary drinks because sugar can affect your insulin levels. It can cause stress on your body. Sugar causes stress on your body. I will say that over and over again. So avoiding sugar as much as possible and replacing it with a sugar substitute that is like Truvia, stevia, something natural, that is going to be your best bet for helping to decrease stress in your gut. I know that was a little bit more on the what you can do to help your gut. So then I won't have to go into detail on that next week. So going into the physical bodily stress, and this can be internal and external. So that's going to include lack of sleep, fasting, or dieting can cause additional stress. It causes your cortisol levels to rise. I think I mentioned that last week as well. Exercise puts stress on your body. Weightlifting especially, high impact sports or activities where you're jumping or you're sprinting or doing something that's a lot of powerful movements, powerlifting, CrossFit, muscle tension. So that might just be stress tension on your body where your muscles won't release, or it may be something that has to do with a new or reoccurring injury, or an imbalance in your body. If you've ever been to a chiropractor who does, they do this assessment where they put these sensors on your back and they can tell which areas of your back are tight and which are not. And they can help with arrows and stuff that are green and red, and they can determine where your body needs adjusted based on where your body is tight. So I think that's really cool. So if you have access to a chiropractor who could do that for you, sometimes that's a good way to get a visual on the tension in your body. So moving on to our second step here, and I forgot to mention beforehand that you will, if you're not using your release worksheets and your repair worksheets for this, use a pen and paper, pad of paper, something like that, and write down some of these things that resonate with you. We're going to go back over them after I'm done, just briefly, so you can kind of take a moment and identify some of those key areas you need to adjust in your life. But as I go through the next section, I want you to maybe take some notes. So identifying specific internal stressors that affect your emotional and mental health. So these are going to, in my opinion, these can affect you just as much, if not more, than the physical stressors. All right, you can work out all day long, and sometimes because of that physical exertion or whatever you're doing for your workout, it can actually help increase some of these chemicals in your brain to help with that mental stress. But these are a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. Even if you work out on a regular basis and you feel like your mental health is on point, it's never too late to dig a little bit deeper, okay? So going into our internal, emotional, and mental stress. So this is going to be worry, anxiety, depression. This may be procrastination, shame. These are going to be feelings that cause you stress. Feelings, and these are chronic feelings of feelings that cause you to go into that downward spiral of emotions. All right, so these are your trigger emotions. Okay, so being able to identify those, they become a little bit less overwhelming and a little bit more manageable. Okay, so writing some of these down. What internal, emotional, mental stressors? Worry, anxiety, depression. This may have to do with procrastination or the feelings that you feel when you go to do a specific job that you typically procrastinate, whether it's dishes or it's taking out the trash. Mine was always cleaning up the dog poop. I hated cleaning up the dog poop. Okay, who likes cleaning up the dog poop though? So the shame, guilt, fear, any other lingering negative emotion that can cause you to go into that downward spiral, that stress on your mind. All right. The second one in this category is going to be stress from expectations. And these are going to be that are placed on you from other people. So this is external, and the internal expectations you place on yourself, or the expectations that have to do with the fear of letting someone else down or the fear of missing out. So those kinds of expectations. And like I said, I want to do an additional video on the 4 tendencies, because that's going to go a little bit deeper into the way that we react to expectations. So this stress can also result from an overbooked schedule, an inability to say no, or a lack of work, home, life balance, So figuring out what those limits are, setting time frames. I do have a daily planner that helps you to kind of outline some of those positive thoughts and be able to break down your most important priorities for the day. If you want access to that, please comment and I can email that to you. Expectations and duties are the next one. So this is going to be external stress from other people. This is all based on almost as if that there's a load or a burden being placed on you that is not yours to carry. All right, so that's family or friend drama. Maybe that's your family get-togethers, or every time you see this group of friends from out of town, or maybe it's just a specific person that may put a lot of stress on you because they're constantly complaining about their life and they don't do anything about it. Okay, so those are the kinds of people that I'm talking about. Also, one-sided friendships, the people who you're always there for and they are never there for you. All right, be careful identifying these friendships, because sometimes different times in our lives we're going to be the 120% and our friend is going to be 80%, and then there's going to be other times where they are pursuing that friendship more than we are. So please be gracious in deciding what friends you're just going to cut out, or the friends that you're maybe going to limit your time with. Be cautious and be discernful in how you go about that. And these are also going to have to do with toxic or narcissistic people who drain your energy or cause you to have a negative focus. So I've gone through times in my life where I'm a very much a people pleaser when it comes to other people's expectations. So sometimes I can put additional stress on myself because I am worried about letting someone else down, or I fear that they are going to need me and I need to be there for them. And that's my job as their friend. And I put a lot of pressure and stress on myself to be that for everyone, to the point where it's difficult to be that for myself, if that makes sense. And some of you may resonate with that. Some of you may be like, I don't have any issues cutting out toxic people if they don't have a servant's mind towards our friendship or whatever. They're not even in my life, Okay, fantastic. If you're great I am not a confrontational person. So if you are also like that, you don't like confrontation, then that can be a difficult those can be difficult boundaries to set. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week on how to set some of those boundaries and address some of these people that just bog us down. So stay tuned for that podcast, or we'll dig a little bit deeper on that. All right. So we just went over, and if you have your worksheet or your and the worksheets, by the way, it's split up from your release worksheet, your repair worksheet, and your overcome worksheet. And that's going to be so that you can break it down. Keep those sheets because we're going to build upon those next week, or keep that piece of paper you're writing on because we're going to build upon it next week. All right. So we went over identifying stressors that influence your physical health internally and externally. We talked about gut stress here, bodily and physical stress. As in like not sleeping or dieting, fasting. What stress is your body undertaking physically? And then the second one we talked about was identifying external stressors that influence your emotional, or internal and external, that affect your emotional and mental health. And that's going to be those worry, anxiety, those emotions that cause you to go into that downward spiral, your stress from expectations, whether they're placed on you by someone else or on you by yourself, overworking that calendar and not learning how to say no. We're going to address some of that next week as well. And then those external stress from other people, those external burdens that you may feel bad about calling them burdens, but no one's going to see your paper. I want to remind you of that. No one needs to see your paper unless you choose to show them. This is your time to process your raw reflections. That's why this podcast is called Raw Reflections. It is meant to encourage you to dig deep into those innermost thoughts that you don't necessarily feel comfortable or vulnerable. You don't want to be vulnerable sharing with other people, but you feel that you can share them with the piece of paper because it's with yourself. You can burn that paper or throw it away if you want to later on, but I encourage you to keep it because it's going to help you see how far you've come. So using these worksheets or your piece of paper, what I want you to do is identify the specific stressors in these categories. So if you need to rewind a little bit, hear me, go back and talk through them one more time. You can. I want you to identify the specific stressor, maybe top 5 or top 3. If you're having a hard time, I want you to just take a moment of silence, maybe 15 minutes where no one needs anything from you, and actually outline these different things, okay? First off, what is it, as you identify these stressors, have a section for the areas that you need to release, the areas that you feel you need to repair, and the ones that you need to overcome. As you think through these, think about why they are burdens. Why is this something that you need to overcome, or something that you may need to repair or release? And as you go through them, you may realize that one of these actually belongs in the overcome category, or this overcome category, it really belongs in the release category because I don't need to be dealing with this. This is not something that serves me or my family or my well-being. So why is it something that I put energy into? Okay, so keeping that in your mind as you're going through these things. Write a list of 10 things that you need to release or repair or overcome. And next week, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how to respond to each of those categories in a way that best serves you. So one last bit here for today, I want to challenge you to find ways to increase your oxytocin levels. All right, so let me explain that real quick. Cortisol is the hormone that your brain releases when in response to any form of stress. Basically that inbuilt alarm system that works with parts of your brain that control mood, motivation, and fear. So the best way to manage these cortisol levels is with oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, quote unquote cuddle hormone. That's the one that our brain releases when we are doing forms of self-care or relaxation, meditation, personal physical exercise, whether that be high intensity or just, yoga or something where you're just moving your body, going for a light walk. So what I want to challenge you to do this week is to find ways that you can increase your oxytocin levels. So rather than focusing on decreasing stress, we're going to focus on countering the stress with oxytocin. That means more self-care, more focusing on you. And sometimes that's hard, especially for moms and for wives. It can be difficult, but I'm challenging you. This is your homework, to actually focus on self-care. Those might be things like yoga, listening to music, ask your hubby to give you a massage or give a massage, same deal when it's that physical interaction. Cuddle. Everybody loves to cuddle, whether it's with your pets, with your significant other, with your friends. It doesn't matter. Just get some cuddles in. Give some hugs. I know it's COVID time. Wear your mask and give a hug, okay? Spend time with people who build you up rather than break you down. Have an orgasm. Sexual intimacy and personal pleasure are both top ways to increase oxytocin levels and decrease stress. Find something that you can do to serve someone else, whether that's someone that you know or you're volunteering at a soup kitchen. Eat food that you enjoy and that is good for your body, that you know is doing good for your body. Be careful with the whole eating food you enjoy, because a lot of times we can reward ourselves and our weight loss goal just goes down to the toilet because we keep rewarding ourselves with food. So I think I mentioned this last week. Don't overdo it. Explore other ways to reduce stress if you are focused on a weight loss goal. So those are just a few options for increasing your oxytocin levels. You can always come up with your own, anything that makes you feel good, feel energized, or that you are doing something good for your mind or body. Be very careful when it comes to alcohol and recreational drugs. It is not a stress reliever, it is a coping mechanism. So finding actual solutions rather than band-aids is what we're going for this week, all right? That is it for today. Please keep your eye out for next week's video, continuing our series on managing stress. Always remember to be the impact in the world around you, and maybe to someone who might need a little encouragement this week. Thank you for joining me for this Raw Reflections podcast, and I will see you next time.